18, 19,
20.
They make 450 movies a year, and they all start out the same way. They all have good people and a good script, and for whatever reason, out of those 450, maybe there's like 6 you remember at the end of the year.
Sorry, I didn't come fast.
What do you do to concoct a movie that has that timeless appeal to it?
There seems to be an element of accident or divine will, or some finger of God saying, let this pass.
I think Big had a great story and a great idea. You could sense that it had great commercial potential.
We definitely felt good about the script we were writing. I don't know that we knew that the movie was definitely going to work.
I first heard about Big because Jim Brooks came in and he had put it on my desk and said, this is your next movie. I didn't know a lot of directors had turned it down at the time, and I was friends with him, so I just thought, it was sweet. It's a universal theme. Everyone thinks when I'm big, I'm going to buy my life to do over. There are universal thoughts people have, and this was one of them, so that's what I responded to.
She really wasn't that experienced as a director, and Jim just had this confidence in her. He said, I just know that if I put Penny in the middle of nowhere and say, okay, your job is to lead these people out of that jungle, and he knows that she's going to get there somehow. He may not know exactly how she's going to do it, but he trusts that she'll get to the end of the line.
Penny had obviously been an actress in Hollywood for years, so she knew a lot of people. I would bring up names to her, and she would have a response because she would know them. It's a sort of a pyramid. Everything kind of builds from the top. Clearly, you have to cast the lead in your movie who has an innocence and kind of a heartbreaking sweetness, as well as an incredible sense of comedy.
Well, I had known Tom Hanks he was on the same Paramount lot, because he was doing Buzz and Buddies, and we were still doing Laverne and Shirley, and he used to come down and watch us and then go back to his state. Tom was one of our first choices.
Tom looks like a little boy who just grew up overnight. I think from the minute he walked through the room, it was just a no-brainer that this guy was, destined to play Josh Bashkin.
Tom Hanks was coming off kind of a dip in his career. There were some pictures that had not been successful. Of course, he's the most successful actor on the planet today. But there was a lull there. He needed a boost.
Everyone turned us down, including Tom. It was, what are we going to do?
When you have a sort of a big disappointment that someone isn't available to play a lead in a movie, the most important thing is that you don't try to get someone else who could maybe do a second-string version of Tom Hanks. You really have to strike out and do something fresh and unique. And I think that was sort of where the Robert De Niro idea came up.
Bob was looking for a commercial film to do, and I knew him, so I sent it to him, and he said yes.
The first time I read Big was with Robert De Niro playing the role of Josh Baskin. It was very dark. Sort of imagined this little 13-year-old boy wandering around the streets. It kind of took on a Mean Streets quality.
Bob might not have been as hilarious, but it would have had a kind of a tender, sweet, real quality to it.
And actually, Bob gave me a great deal of validity as a director. Once he said yes, now everyone wanted to do it. But there was a deal problem with the studio and Bob.
They never could make a deal with Robert De Niro. And then when it didn't work out, Tom was now available.
He changed his mind, which we were all very, very happy about.
But if we wanted Tom, we had to wait several months to start. And we started getting wind of other projects that were being developed.
There were 4 body-switching movies. Big was the first one that was greenlit and would have been the first one out, but because we waited for Tom, it was the last one out.
Across town, there's another film going about an adult becoming a boy, and we felt now, this horrible situation was unfolding.
There was a lot of politics involved, and the picture wrote on it. It was very anguishing for Penny and everyone. If Tom Hanks is the lead in your movie, you have to find a woman who suits him, a kind of chemistry that makes the story work.
There were, a couple of people that we were thinking of, but it's all about chemistry. It's not whether this person's good and this person's good. It's whether they're good together.
I never thought I was going to get the part. I thought the casting has been going on so long. I think I had 2 birthdays over the course of the casting for Susan. I was just like, Penny, I don't know if you're right. I don't know if I want your look. Do you want to go blonde? And I thought to myself, well, she's just not going to cast me because there's no way she's going to, after Robert De Niro and now Tom Hanks, no, it's just not going to happen. And she did.
Take 3.
She's great. She's a great girl. And she could go from tough to warm, and a lot was done with hair and makeup, but she herself can, whereas some could play the warm side, and some could play the tough side, never got off of it.
An actress like Elizabeth Perkins, who we had all seen on stage, it just sort of felt the chemistry would be good between them.
I was madly in love with Tom Hanks when we were making that movie. I just adored him on every level. I just thought he was the cutest, most charming man I'd ever met in my life.
Everyone look at Traces. And play. Go ahead.
We went through a lot to find the right kids. We went to all the public and private schools. We had open calls. That was a huge, huge undertaking.
David Moscow's was a hard part to cast because it has to be someone to match Tom. You know, you have to find someone who hopefully will turn into that person.
David Moscow, who was a local New York boy, he had come in earlier when we thought we might be casting to find a young Bob.
They didn't know who the lead actor was going to be, so they were trying to figure out who the best friend was going to be. So I think everybody was being cast for Billy. And I guess I managed to catch her eye in some way. And then at some point when Tom came on, she was like, get that kid back in here. He'd be good to play the young Tom.
When it was Tom, the match was just too delicious to resist. It was so great.
You're Josh Baskin, remember? You broke your arm on my roof. You hid in my basement when Robert Dyson was about to rip your head off.
You don't get it, do you? This is important.
Billy was really a hard part to do. That required a lot. Jared Rushton was from California, and he came in right away.
They were just looking for somebody young to read LA stars for this movie Big. And they just picked me that day. And that day they started reading me with various actors. Sean Penn and Robert De Niro.
The kid who plays Billy Kopecki was the first kid we had in to read with grown-ups. And so we kind of never trusted the choice. And we read 1 billion kids after that.
Over the course of auditioning over and over and over, I think eventually Penny decided that she wanted me for the part.
Let's not lie to ourselves. If a kid likes a toy, it sells, that's all.
But every bit of research and focused
It worked in the research, it worked in the testing, it just didn't work with the kid. Penny Marshall, bless her heart, cast me as Macmillan. I was surprised because I played so many heavies, Italian, sopranos and Prizzi's Honor and a lot of heavies.
What we all agreed was that he had a lightness that hadn't been really explored. If you observe in an actor that they have a quality that nobody's really tapped before, it's sort of an exciting notion.
You can't see this on a marketing report. He's not a toy maker anymore. He's now part of a corporation, so he's become a corporate executive, not a toy maker. The kid rejuvenated him, gave him back his youth.
Robert Loggia will ground Tom, so I'm not surrounding him with comedy people. I'm surrounding him with more dramatic actors to counterbalance Tom's humor.
Oh, come on, Susan. Don't kid yourself. That man is a killer.
All he said was he didn't get it.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Get that bag.
Well, John had always been one of the really fine stage actors.
He has that straight look that's a little bit sullen sometimes, a little bit like the world has done something to him that he's not too happy about.
I suppose you could have cast John Hurt's role with someone slicker or more conventional, but it wouldn't have been very interesting.
He read that part, Susan's ex-boyfriend, and he read it so intensely, and that made me laugh. More than any comedy actor coming in and commenting on it.
We wrote him as a little bit more, I think, Machiavellian, but in control. John played him a little bit denser, a little less sharp than her, I thought, which was a great call.
Hey, what's this?
Shampoo, razor, neckties, and your exercise tape.
About a week into filming, I realized that John Hurt was sort of playing an immature child bully.
Give me the goddamn ball! I never said that!
Making faces like this and mocking and repeating lines and grabbing papers out of people's hands. And so he was sort of doing the antithesis of Josh Baskin.
Cute. Can you walk the dog? You get how to knock?
He elevated unlikability to a new level in that role. He was easy to hate, but in an entertaining way.
John's a stage actor, and he was much more stick to the script, much more serious. Whereas Tom, you never knew what was going to happen.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah.
It used virtually everything Tom brings to the game, which is extraordinary because he nailed it as an actor. There's no exaggerating how good the acting is. I mean, he did the kid, nothing but his acting did it. And he's that funny. That's rare.
I know Tom spent a lot of time just trying to be childlike, but not to exaggerate childlike mannerisms, just be exactly like a 12-year-old would be, as opposed to some over-the-top parody of a 12-year-old.
You got to keep it down and play it for real. Anything like that, I said, bring it down. So this is my signal to Tom the most, but you got to play it for real or it don't work.
During the rehearsal process, Tom and Jared Rushton and I hung out a bit. I would do a scene with Jared, and then Tom would sort of be observing a little bit, and then, to see if there was anything that he could draw upon from those scenes.
I had David Moscow act all the scenes with Elizabeth Perkins, and we videotaped them so that Tom had a guideline of what really a 12-year-old would do, because that's a woman to him. To Tom it isn't, it's a peer, but to a kid, he's shy about it.
There are these moments with him and Elizabeth that are, for a 12-year-old kid, I was like, my mind was blown. This is amazing. My feet were way too big for my body at that point. So I had a very funky walk because my shoes, it was like clopping and flopping around. And he actually ended up using that.
One of my favorite moments in the whole movie. He's going to look for Zoltar, and him and Billy are crossing the street, and Tom starts running like this. It's not a video game. I thought to myself, oh my God, he looks like my 13-year-old son. Like all of a sudden he would do these incredibly geeky things.
The script for Big was a wonderful foundation for two comic geniuses, Penny and Tom, to go to work. It was two minds meeting at a point in time, so there's this feeling of surprise at every moment.
When he takes the carrot and just keeps dipping it into the dressing, completely oblivious to the fact that anybody's watching him. And when he started licking the cream cheese out of the celery and then put the celery back after licking the guy, I said, okay, this is going to be really great. Everybody takes credit for the corn, for the baby corn. Saying, well, I leaned over and said, wouldn't it be funny if he ate the baby corn? That was Penny saying, well, you've got this whole table, so just go over there and eat. Go over there and eat like a kid would eat.
There wasn't such good food there, to be honest. It was sort of boring, except there was that baby corn, so I just went, and he went.
It just killed me, and it was so Tom Hanks. That kind of really earnest, innocent, kind of bemused quality he had when he looked at the cob of corn.
The corn thing was just spur of the moment, thinking on your feet. Those are things that are special and wouldn't have happened with any other director and actor.
Penny and Tom had a great communication going, and a lot of things happened from the two of them just being so comfortable with each other.
I always liked the beginning and ends of scenes where they could play a little bit. Just to get the words out of the actor's mouth is sort of a boring job. So I like to add around it, whether it's physically with props or let them continue talking. You never know what's going to come out, and it could be better.
Penny, when she directs a scene, no matter how small, you can just see how a little scene becomes something worth watching.
There was a minor amount of action planned with the silly string, but then they all started inventing, little gags.
Pork rinds!
Penny had just gathered huge bags of toys. Silly string, wacky stuff, bubbles, all this kind of stuff.
They gave us tons of toys, and Silly String had just come out that time. You're trapped in a room with everybody, there's 10 bottles of Silly String out there, and Penny says, go crazy.
David and myself and Tom, and just let us run wild and see what ended up happening.
Props did a great job. I said, get me a toy, get me a this, get me a that. And so we played a lot. Well, he's a kid, you're supposed to play. Kids play. They don't walk in a straight line. They walk up and down the sidewalk. They walk up and down stairs. They don't walk this way and sit there. That's not what kids do.
Tom was an active participant in all of the improvisation, all of the playing, all of the toys, all of that sort of thing. He had a child very close to our age at that point in time. And he brought in a lot of things that he knew from observing his own kid.
There were certain things in the movie that he got from his kid. They had written in the script that when he gets big and he runs and looks for Billy, that they give him an Indian burn.
It's me. It's Josh.
Coach Bob!
No, wait. Stop, please. I'm your best friend. Please, you can't believe me.
It gives Billy no place to change, go from scared to starting to believe to accepting. It's not long enough. So Tom said, my kid does this.
I meant it. I said it. I stole my mama's credit. I'm cool. I'm hot. Suck you in the stomach 3 more times.
Josh?
Then he said, oh, and by the way, we're going to do a dance at FAO Schwartz, and we're going to have a piano that when you hit it will sound a note and it will light up. And here is a cassette of Chopsticks and Heart and Soul. And Bob, you'll do the melody, and Tom, you'll do the counterpoint. And she said, no, I don't want you to be choreographed to look like dancers. I want you to work it out in your own way. And we'll shoot it on a Sunday at FAO Schwartz, somewhere way down the line.
We made cardboard mock-ups of this thing and sent one to France, where Loggia was at the time, and Tom had one. And I wished I had filmed Tom practicing on it, on the cardboard, because he was really intensely trying to do it.
I laid out the piano by my pool, which the dogs quickly piddled on. And I worked on the pool barefoot, jumping around, and it worked out what I would do with the actual piano. We get to FAO Schwartz, and that Sunday, the crowd is there.
Robert Greenhut, our producer, kept saying, well, do you need stunt doubles? You need dancers? I said, no, I don't need them. If I could do it, they could do it. So they did all their own stuff.
Background action!
What makes that scene is that, like, look, Ma, we're dancing. We're dancing. You know, we were transported. We were in the moment.
They did it together, and it's more fun. It's more fun if you do it than, oh, no, my stuff. Yeah. What's the fun of that?
Tom, when he did that slide like into home plate, you know, I didn't know he was going to do that. You really hope for things in film that are like that, where they're not rehearsed, you know.
I had to hand it to the actors, just making us believe it. The performance of both of them joining each other on the piano and pulling it off in a way that didn't seem silly or contrived. They just sold the fact there were two people having fun.
And of course, they play this sequence over and over and over again, along with Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. So it's become a classic dance routine in a film.
No, really, I'll watch.
Come on, it's fun. I'll do it. Come on.
I'd never been on a trampoline in a dress that was that close to a window.
Here you go. Here you go. Yeah.
I was really, really scared. But what Penny really instructed me to do was to be just as resistant as possible until you just let it take you over and let the joy and the innocence and all of your childhood come rushing back. She's a completely different person after that.
That was the crystallization of it, with him giving her that kind of joy on the trampoline and then cutting outside for the trampoline shot. That was one of the most important shots in the movie.
I wanted to do a shot from outside, and they were saying, we don't have time, it costs too much.
It took probably half the night just to get that one shot from across the street.
And I'm on a walkie to Tom. Tom, over to your right, Mark. Okay, move your legs funnier. And they must have jumped for I don't know how long. Okay, now do the sitting down before jumping. They thought it would be too expensive, but there was a shot that I wanted.
Really was up to Penny to put this puzzle together and make it believable, first and foremost.
Penny Marshall knows exactly what she was trying to get out of that film.
When we were shooting this movie, all of a sudden everybody else was doing body-changing movies. And I remember Tom used to come up to me on the set and say, we're going straight to video, man. This was so bad. This is so bad. We just had no idea that the movie was going to break 100 million and Tom was going to go on to get an Oscar nomination. Nobody had any idea that it was going to take off like that. But I think the reason that we didn't go straight to video is because Penny made a film that walked that really fine line of sophisticated comedy.
It should be noted that here's a woman, and there weren't many. She's early in the whole notion of women directing. And she had to win the respect of people just as a woman, as the first time she'd done the whole thing. So what Penny achieved here is really, she had more hurdles than a guy would have had in that situation, I think.
I think that it's just hundreds of elements that manage to all converge at the right point of time. Different people who are involved with it, the producers, the writers, the actors.
It's a group effort. You pull together, and you're all there, like on the top of Everest, looking down and you say, how the hell did we get here? It's really quite a trip, you know.
Whenever somebody comes up to me on the street and says, where do I know you? I say, I was in the movie Big. And they go, that's right. That's just how great it is to be involved in what is a classic movie.
The most satisfying thing about the movie is that it did well and that people liked it. So, it's better than a sharp stick in your eye,
To say I came up with the idea at lunch, I guess is technically true. I was with a friend of mine at lunch, and I was sitting there, and I said, okay, look at your watch. I'll come up with a movie. And I said, dog turns into a cat turns into a dog, and a kid turns into a grown-up. And then I paused, and I said, well, actually, that actually has some sense to it. What if the wish that every kid makes to be bigger came true? And then I stopped by Ann's later that day, and I said, I had this idea today. And I pitched it to her, just the idea. And then we started pitching with each other.
We just started talking about, and what if this happened? What if that? Oh, he's a kid who makes a wish. He wants to grow up. But then what does he have to do?
Yeah.
Well, he's got to get a job. And then what does he have to do? So I grabbed this little micro cassette tape recorder I had and turned it on. We went back to the,
Anne was very smart. She didn't want us to squander all this inspiration.
It's much better to do it on tape.
So she ran and got her tape recorder, and then we just kept pitching with the same amount of spontaneity, I think.
Yeah, we laughed.
We had a really good time. And I'd say that day we probably came up with the whole structure of the movie, 70% of the movie in the first 2 hours.
It was, how you get a rush? It was a rush. It was like intake of breath. And I just knew that this was going to go someplace. It just kept building and building.
And each time the plot got more complicated, like who his nemesis was in this company, the satire of his innocence kind of being this redemptive thing that made him immune to all their corporate politics, or this woman who was trying to attach to him to climb to the top, but he redeems her with his innocence, or him missing childhood, all these things that we came up with that first day just in this conversation. We sort of knew, oh my God, this is getting richer.
It was like, if it's the first time that I've ever felt so confident in something that I've done, it was because there was this, it was magic.
We were both coming off of jobs where we were a little bit tense and we were writing under a certain amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And this felt like anti-writing in a way. It made the process fun and spontaneous, and we could share it with somebody. And I think that really made it feel very good.
The first title that we came up with, I think I was trying to push this on you, and you rightly said it was later. It was not the right title, but was When I Grow Up. And it might have been from an old Beach Boys song, When I Grow Up to Be a Man.
Mm-hmm. I suggested big because when I was a little kid, that's what I would say to my father when I wanted to be on his shoulders. I would say, big, like I want to be big. So he would put me up on his shoulders. Yeah. So I pitched that, and and it seemed elegant and short.
It was actually, how could we not? Neither one of us were really broad comedy writers at all. And we were not joke-oriented. We were very much character-oriented. So when we found ourselves in a draft, having the typical thing that a kid would do if he grew up,
right,
like spinning off his chair, the moment it seemed like it was a typical kid joke, we just would pull it out.
Yeah.
Whenever we hit
if
one
there
of
was
those,
a
we'd pull it
punchline
out.
on top of the situation
Right.
where you could feel the writer, we'd yank it out.
Right.
If you were organically laughing at the situation, then that was great. That's where the comedy should come from. If we went through pages and pages where you weren't laughing, that was okay.
Right, and I think that's what gave the poignancy to it,
Yeah.
was that they were always on that edge of being a kid on his own, and he can't go home again. There's always that little moment of sadness just right around the corner.
And under a lot of the movie, there's
Yes.
a lot of sadness under the movie.
Yeah.
A loss of childhood is a wonderful and a sad thing.
Yes.
And I think we respected both those emotions, right? And so I think that one of the things we did that was good was that when the story wasn't funny to us, but was true to the story, that was okay.
We only sent it to Jim.
Is that right?
Yes.
And he liked it apparently. So
I was just remembering this today, that had, in every contract they say if you want to buy a script, how much time the studio has to consider it. And then the only exception it was negotiated was a hot properties clause, so that if you declare something a hot property, the studio had to answer within 24 hours. And I think when I read this, it was like amazing, like being in a submarine, hot property clause, and it was a great idea. And I'm not premise oriented. I'm God bless people who are. I'm not. But it transcended right away, and that's what it did. It was not about its idea. It was about its writers. And it was so funny because it was all happened that fast, and then the work went on for another year? Anyway, at least another year.
Yeah, the second draft took a year. First draft took us 4 months. We sold it in 24 hours, and then it took us a year.
I think we went to a few people. I'm very good friends with Penny. So it was very casual. It was very, you want to try this, or what do you think? And it was very simple. I think she had only done Jumping Jack Flash, and she had been a replacement director on that. She'd come in a while. So this was the first film which she had a chance to fully prepare, fully cast. It used to be funny because I was filming a movie in Washington as she was filming this in New York. And we talk on the phone every day about, I'd see dailies and we talk every day. And most days she would apologize. She would apologize for her work. She said, I'm so sorry I did this to you. I'm so sorry. And then it was just, just this extraordinary piece of work. Where I felt horrible for a while is that, this wonderful script that these guys had done, and then to spend this other year on it. And in that year, I think 3 other pictures with the same premise came out before us. And that wasn't good. And what nobody remembers is a couple of them were very well reviewed. I mean, it's just, how gossamer it is. And then so that we were looking for, how to set ourselves apart. And it was the only time I knew this happened. They brought an outside advertising agency in for this problem.
It's true.
J. Walter Thompson. And they came in with the poster, which I think was sort of magic for us, which was Tom, with the best acting he ever did, with the expression on his face, have you ever had a really big secret? And it just took us out of, just that premise and having to sell that premise.